It's been a while. We skipped last week, and also I didn't host the previous one because I was on leave. I've missed you guys. It's good to be on once again. Today I have with me a very special guest who I'm going to introduce to you guys. I have Todd Weaver with me, who's the CEO of Purism. How is it going, sir?
That's going great. How about you?
Doing absolutely wonderfully, and thanks for joining us at such an early time. I realize
For
that
sure.
it's very early where you are.
Yeah, it
All
is,
right.
but
Well,
that's all right. I'm happy to be on.
I guess it comes as no surprise to you that that a bunch of people in my team were like, "Ask him this, ask him that." They were very excited to see that I'm gonna have you on today because obviously, given the overlap between our projects and companies, quite a few people are using Purism products at NIM.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's really exciting to have you on. Can't wait to jump into our conversation and welcome again to our beautiful community to this call. But before we get started with the conversation with Todd, as usual, I'm going to go through a quick news roundup to walk you guys through what happened over the past 2 weeks. There's quite a bit to walk through today, so I'm going to be trying to make it quick. First of all, some sad news. As you probably saw from our channels, we're saying farewell to Professor Ross Anderson, who passed away last week. He was a professor of security engineering at Cambridge and a real giant in the field of computer security. And he was also a colleague and friend of both the team and NIM advisors, including Harry and Anya, who he invited to give talks at Cambridge several times. And more importantly, he was a heavy critic of not just surveillance, but importantly also the business model of surveillance. So he draw a direct connection between economics and security and privacy, which also, of course, defines the NIM ethos. If you've been with us for some time, then you know this. We're also trying to provide an alternative to surveillance, not only in a technological sense, but also in terms of economics. We've left some links to his work in the chat, so make sure to check his work out. And rest in peace, Professor Anderson. Moving on, the first ever NIM VPN release on mainnet is out, which is quite exciting. So all the previous releases were on testnet. So now you get to test NIM VPN on mainnet as well. So as we're headed towards that full public launch of NIM VPN, this is a big step towards that. So please sign up and join the Matrix chat, the NIM VPN Matrix chat on the NIM Matrix server, and start testing today. Moving on to some NSL updates. So for those of you who haven't heard about NSL, NSL is NIM's Quad League. It's our new structure for community contributions, and this is how we enable you guys to contribute to the objectives of NIM. And recently, a blog post was shared about Tupi Quim, one of our most active squads from Brazil. And as season 0 is closing now, so actually we closed it 4 days ago officially. We are going to share some details with you guys on the spectacular contributions that we've seen already, even though this was season 0, so a bit of a test run. We've seen some pretty amazing contributions already. So big thanks for that to everybody who contributed, and hopefully you guys will be encouraged and inspired to contribute more if you haven't already started. Now, another piece of news related to NSL, ninjas can now submit their mission reports. So like I said, season 0 is over and there are a bunch of things that you guys did, and we need to know about that so that we can shout you out and also reward you. So make sure to follow the instructions which we shared with you guys and post your missions ASAP. And the last NSL related update is that registration, which a lot of you have been asking for, registration for new squads has opened. So for those of you who are new, squads are autonomous groups within the NIM community. And they have some special privileges when it comes to NSL, so they have access to some tasks that individuals do not, and also they are some wonderful groups of people. If you want to form your own squad, then you can do so now, and this also goes for our already existing squads. So re-registration will be necessary because we are creating a new squad database. And for that, we would like to ask you to follow the instructions that we shared with you guys. And also a link will be shared in the chat and register your squad, whether it's new or existing. Now, a quick note on a contest that we have ongoing. It's a Twitter thread contest. You can win some NIM tokens if you write a solid Twitter thread about DVPNs. So distributed VPNs is the main topic this time. There's not a lot of time to join, so make sure to do so by clicking the link that was shared in the chat just now. And then another big piece of news, a lot of you, including myself, of course, have been waiting for this for quite some time. You can now stake directly from the NIM Explorer, stake your NIM tokens using the Kepler wallet. Now, the reason why this is a big deal is because we currently don't have a mobile NIM wallet app. And from this point forward, you can, with using the Kepler integration, you can also stake from your mobile. So this was a big feature request from our community. We're finally delivering on it. So hopefully you guys are as happy about it as I am. Make sure to check out the tweet that was shared with you in the chat for further details. Now, a few quick pieces of news. One not so quick, one more quick about or for our node operators. So a new blog post is out about the question of minimum profit margins for NIM nodes. A bit of history on this, but you can read the blog post for further information. About a year ago, a community member, a community OG suggested, hi there, Wunderbear, hopefully you're watching this, suggested for us to implement minimum profit margins to basically protect our delegators from node operators suddenly changing their profit margins, and also to protect node operators from undesirable race to the bottom dynamics. So we did implement this change just recently on the interface level, so in the UI of the wallet. It's just basically a symbolic thing because you can bypass it via CLI. But as it turns out, there's some discord within the community about the change when it comes to implementing it on the actual contract. So we're going to be opening up the discussion and try to get to some consensus with you guys. So make sure to join the next operator AMA if you have any thoughts on this question. And let's keep the conversation going. And please, if you're interested in this topic, then make sure to check out the blog post that we shared with you guys. And the last quick reminder for our node operators, Fast and Furious, our NIM network performance testing event is still in full force. We did skip last week's test, apologies for that, but this week, tomorrow, we're going to be back with another test. And if I remember correctly, I'm going to look this up for you guys. I don't want to say anything stupid, but if I remember correctly, we landed on Tuesdays as the recurring day of the week for these tests. So make sure to make it to that Panda list by participating in the Fast and Furious tests, and also updating your nodes to the latest binary. And yeah, just keep an eye on the announcements and please participate. It's a fun activity. And that was all my news roundup. Now over to you, Todd. Once again, it is a true pleasure to have you on. Very excited. Before anything else, I would like to ask you to introduce Purism. What are you guys doing? What do you guys stand for?
Sure, great. So my name is Todd Weaver. I'm the founder and CEO of Purism, SPC. The SPC stands for Social Purpose Corporation, which actually makes us different than the big tech competition. So we actually advance our mission first, which is making sure that people have their encryption keys, that they own them, that they're in control of their devices. We release all of our software. We release all of our schematics of products that we author, and that puts people in control, right? So it's really about control, making sure that you control your keys, you control your devices. So starting in 2014, we're actually coming up on our 10-year anniversary at the tail end of this year. What is it we do is we produce hardware, software, and services into a bundle. So we do laptops, mini PCs, a tablet, as well as a phone, all of which run Pure OS, which is a Linux kernel-based distribution that we authored and bundled all that together. And we created the first truly convergent operating system as well. So you can see that what we're driving for is a separate C word, which is convenience. So you're able to just purchase our products. It comes to you fully loaded. So the hardware's secure, privacy protecting, no data is leaking at all. There's no bloatware. And then we bundle that with the software as well as services that come with it. When you get into phones, and we also add some additional services that we call Librem Awesome, which is where we provide the SIM as well as cell service. So that way it's sort of like VPN for cellular. And this is actually an area we're looking to work with NIM on later, is to integrate that on the data protection side, so that you have a full NIM provided even data connection. And so things we care about civil liberties, individual freedoms, privacy, and security. And the mix between all of those is really valuable for business to consumer, business to business, as well as business to government.
Excellent. Thanks for that very concise but very information-rich introduction to Purism. What I first want to dig into a little bit further is privacy preserving ISP or mobile service provider. That's very interesting because it's I don't think it's obvious to many people how much surveillance is going on by ISPs and how many different avenues they have to surveil you, which is of course both a privacy and a security concern. Now, you guys are basically, if my understanding is correct, you're aiming to change that and provide an alternative to people. So, what sets apart a privacy-preserving or privacy-respecting ISP or mobile service provider from the rest of them?
So when you're looking at ISPs, what we're here talking about primarily in this case is cellular ISPs. And so, so on our phone, which is the device here, we have there's a number of things that the carriers or service providers are able to do that they're not able to do on our devices. So the first is everything that is iOS or Android, you have no visibility to actually seeing what it's doing. So as one example case, if you take an Android phone, an iPhone, and then a Librem 5 phone running Pure OS, our phone, and you unbox them and boot them up and connect them to Wi-Fi, what you actually see is that the iPhone is going to leak about 3 gig of data in 24 hours that you don't know what it's doing. Okay. The Android phone will be about 4 gig of data in a 24-hour period that you also don't know what it's doing. You have no transparency, no visibility. It's just doing something, sending and receiving a bunch of binary bits. You can't know. On our phone, it'll be exactly 0 bits. Absolutely nothing is sent nor received unless you initiate that. You open up a browser or you connect to a page. So the first thing is there's a lot of data that is just being routed around. And then when you look at those Android or iOS, what they're also doing is they're partnered with the firmware that is on the cellular modem. And then one of the things you get into when you're dealing with hardware and why we actually had to produce our own phone is because all phones are either Qualcomm or MediaTek based as the internal components. And what that is that's a combined tin can into cellular modem, CPU, as well as memory. And if you ask me, hey, I want to crack into WhatsApp encryption, I can say easy, just go one layer lower because then I have access one layer lower than the application. And I have access to everything on the memory, which means I have access to your keys. So how that relates back to the cellular providers is those cellular providers have access to that firmware because they have to be able to remotely out of band push updates to your firmware modem. So what we actually did is we separated out the hardware from a CPU, memory, and modem module. So on internal to ours, that's a modem. It's a module, and what you get by doing physical hardware separation is you have physical isolation, which means that all it has is just a dumb pipe. So it has no access to memory or CPU. So why is that important? Is then you start to realize that whomever has the lowest level access, of course, has access to everything above it, which means encryption keys, which means your crypto keys, which means everything you store on the device, all your communication. So we had proper isolation all the way down, which is also why we had to create our own schematics, produce our own hardware, manufacture our own hardware. We actually also manufacture a Liberty phone in the USA. So back to your question of ISPs or cellular service providers. What we did is we carved them off and put them up into you're just a dumb pipe. You provide calling, texting, and data, and that's it. You have no access to the operating system or firmware or CPU or memory. Then we also decided to add what we call Librem AWSIM, which is a SIM card that we provide. It happens to be AT&T as the backbone, but because we kept them as the dumb pipe, what we're actually able to do is also shroud all your financial details. So that's the aspect of privacy protection that's really valuable, is that similar to a VPN, where you are offloading all your data to transfer to some other location, which then shrouds from your current ISP to your home. What you're seeing with AWSIM is that we can provide you a SIM card. It's AT&T as the backbone, so it has a wide coverage, but all they are aware of is a SIM number and then the modem firmware number. That's it. And so they don't have any financial information or personal identifying information for your usage. That's really a valuable uh, a value add for privacy protection pieces. There's a couple of questions that are coming in, so I'm going to field a few of those as I sort of see them coming by. One of the questions is what Android version? It's not Android. It's not a de-Googled Android. It's just a straight up pure OS, our operating system that is a Linux kernel-based distribution based off of Debian. So it's a completely different phone service. That also does bring up the follow-on question oftentimes, which is what are the apps that can run on that device? And so that is an area around convenience that we recognize as we'll have a pretty large audience, but they're still going to be small in the relative scale of the world, where our apps are calling, texting, browsing the web. You can also run standard any Linux desktop applications because you can run a full-blown desktop environment from the phone. It's a quad-core computer. You can plug it into a keyboard, mouse, and monitor and have a full-blown desktop environment. But the other apps, if you say I need to have 3 cameras or insert whatever proprietary name brand you use, those things don't currently run unless you emulate Android to get them to run. So they can run, but not in a convenient way at this time. So back to I think I'm now coming around to answering your direct question, which is privacy preserving ISPs. One of the important things is where is your data and who has access to your data. If you use a Purism product and awesome service, the answer is nobody except you. So we don't have any access to that phone. You bought it and you own it. Here's probably the most important analogy, which drives the point home. If you go to our site and you purchase a phone, we ship you the phone, you open the phone up, you turn it on, you put in a SIM card, and you start using it, and you'll realize you've never signed a terms of service. You never had a contract to read. The reason is because you actually own the device. So that's mind blowing because everybody out there and everything, you're always having to click some type of terms of service that you don't read, which is a contract of adhesion anyway, to just give up all of your data. We don't participate in any part of that. So you don't have to sign anything at all. You buy the phone, it's yours, you own it, you can do with it what you will.
Damn. That was a lot there. A lot of very interesting points that we could dig into. By the way, just a quick note: I forgot to mention to the community that, of course, as usual, you can leave your questions to me, Todd, or anybody else in the chat. We're keeping a close eye there. You can also leave them on our Matrix server if you want to preserve your anonymity and not log in with your YouTube account. And Todd, don't worry, I'm going to be like reading you those questions, but you can also just keep answering them if you.
Excellent.
People seem to be very happy about your beard and very impressed by it, myself included. So.
Yeah, well, it's a good conversation starter. Actually, I think I'm just going to keep growing it out because it seems like the longer it gets, the more conversations that get started that way.
Nice one. Look, okay, I need to choose a few things that we dig into here. You sort of
Sure.
you sort of explained how the dump pipe works, like how you're using AT&T's like network infrastructure as a dump pipe, which my understanding is that you dissociate like personal user information, which they would have if they had a contract with AT&T, right? Uh, yeah, so basically by that, if they don't have any private information about you, then they don't know who that traffic belongs to, right? Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there's a couple of asterisks you have once you start getting into some of the details, such as a phone call, of course, is just plain old telephony service. It's called POTS. So, of course, that is an unencrypted communication. Text messaging, of course, SMS, MMS, those are plain messaging. Data is, of course, encrypted. So the more you do in your data cycle, then it's just simply encrypted bits passing over their network. So, but the carriers themselves have no personal identifying information when using the combination of what I described earlier on our products. So therefore, it's just a dumb pipe. They don't have any metadata to even track anything down. It's just phone number, SIM card, and cellular modem. You also, because our modems are modular, you can actually even swap those out. We even provided as part of our service, you can even swap your SIM number virtually. So we have all sorts of capabilities to make sure that your information is fully protected. The last bit about, when I call them a dumb pipe, that's what people want, right? Well, everybody really wants to have these providers not monetizing their data, because that creates a perverse business model. It incentivizes those groups to gather up as much information on you as possible. So that's why, if you're running Android or iOS, that the applications themselves are just gobbling up everything they can, because there's an entire business industry. It's extremely profitable to gather up information on you. And then, because those keyed fields are so easy to link, that one person who gathers up just all your GPS location everywhere and then shares that, it can be linked up because of your phone number or your SIM card, and then, which of course then ties to your financial information and your location and everything else. So it's if so in our case, what we choose to say is, you will know nothing unless we opt in to share that, such as opt in to make the phone call, or opt in to send a text message, or choose to register or log into a YouTube account. Those are opt-in choices that the individual makes. So we start you off on a completely clean, strong foundation, and you can then choose your path.
We have a good question from Alex, which I will add a bit to. How are SIMs telephone communications made private on your devices? Because I guess where maybe a sort of like a golden what's the word? Like a really good combo of something like NIM VPN or the NIM Mixnet and your devices would be, is
Correct.
that my understanding? Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
but like fingerprinting and like
Mhm.
metadata collection, and also just in the case of telephone calls and text messages, which, as you said, are basically plain text, a man in the middle attack for those.
Yep.
I guess
Correct.
you're not protecting against, right? So privacy usually is a stack of things. There are multiple
Correct.
angles which you need to protect yourself from, right? And then
Mhm.
yeah. Anyways, I will just let you riff on it because spoke enough.
Sure. So all of what you had described there is pretty spot on. I'll just add a couple pieces. What I'll first describe is what you're kind of hinting at, which is the gold standard, right? What is the ultimate in protection for communications, specifically, was around your question. So what you're looking at in that case is the stack of a hardware side, which is of course what we have, that doesn't leak any data. Then you have a software stack where it's all free and open source software running a Linux kernel, and you're like, hey, you now can audit and verify that nothing is being sent nor received without your consent. And then on top of that, you need your communication suite. So the communication suite tends to be use case individualized. So it's like, do you need to make plain old telephony calls? Do you need to make text messages? Or is your circle of groups all using Matrix? If so, well then, hey, Matrix is currently built into our chats application for text messaging. We plan to, and have always actually planned for quite some time, to implement that into the calling service. And so then you can start to see, okay, well then, if you actually implement something like Matrix with end-to-end encrypted messaging, then you're using just the data pipe. So you're not using the plain old telephony service, and you're not using SMS or MMS. You're using an encrypted data connection to your provider. Then you can imagine, wow, now add NIM. And then you're like, oh, well, now you're completely solid, because all of your packets are also, shrouded through the mixnet.
Wow. Okay. Once again, a ton of threads that I could pick up on here, and I'm just wondering if I should. I'm really torn whether I should go back with some of the notes that I took from your riff earlier, or should we just go on to the next question that I have listed.
I have time if you want to go hammer through them. I'll
All
get
right.
through them, no
So
problem.
first of all, okay, let's go back to your like first monologue. I want to ask you about the 3 or 4 gigs, depending on whether it's Android or iPhone, that is being communicated between your device and something that we don't know about. Are there any guesses as to what those could be, as to what could be going on there? Because that's a really scary amount of data. What did you say? How long does it take for your phone to?
In 24 hours. And actually, that's not even connecting it to cellular. So so the challenge is that what is in that data? Well, we have to speculate. We don't actually know, but it's such a gigantic amount of data. What we know from the market and what's valuable is your GPS location. But realize that GPS chips, or GNSS chips, those are inbound only, right? So they don't send data. The chip itself doesn't send data. It just receives. So the leak of your GNS or GPS location data is entirely because of the operating system and applications. But then it's also what's in your camera roll, what's in your entire home folder, what's your SIM card, what's your telephone number, what is any personal information you've registered on the device. All of that is sent, but then you realize it's just ongoing. So it's just polling constantly, which tends to be around what apps are running, what apps are you using currently, what data are you storing on those apps, and then of course your location and any personal identifying information around it, which is a constant leak. On our devices, it's zero because if you open up a Maps application, then the map data will come in and then your GPS location will get added on top. So we even do things where we don't share the data publicly. We do local processing, which even keeps more privacy protection on there. But it is a giant amount of data because that's the entire business model. So realize all the way back to almost the very first thing I said on the call is that we're a social purpose corporation, which means this is actually really a profound difference. All the big tech companies, the C corporations, what have to do is they have to maximize shareholder value at all costs. Okay. What that means is that there's a huge value in your data. So they're incentivized to gather up everything. There's nothing that stops them from it. It's like, it's valuable. We need to do it. We have the ability to do it. So let's do it. Our approach is why we incorporated as a social purpose corporation, where I wrote into the articles of incorporation that state we will never track you. We will never have your encryption keys. You're going to have complete access to all of the software. You're going to be in complete control. The reason I wrote all of those pieces is so then we don't have any incentive to compete in that space at all. And so then I can confidently say and continue to say that you're actually purchasing our device, you're in complete control of that device, and then you're able to do with it whatever you want. So we don't participate in the entire surveillance capitalism market, which is extremely valuable. And I don't want to participate in it because I think it is a detriment to digital rights overall.
Yeah, so eloquent, and I will just have to stop nodding because my neck will break at some point. And all of this, what you just said, also ties into my farewell to Ross Anderson at the beginning, right? He was also one of the strongest voices to point out the massive problems of the surveillance business model. And then I guess part of the reason why you're on this call with Nim, of course, is because both of us are working on not only just a technological alternative and protection,
Sure.
but also an economical one against surveillance. Because it's not just a technological problem; it's also a huge business problem. It's a
Correct.
problem of incentives. Very well said.
That's right. I mean, when you use the word incentives, it actually is amazing how powerful it is. So you look at a business, and you can just look at a manager of some big tech company, and they go to a developer and they say, okay, look at we have this side load business here where we have if how much data can we get, like, because we could sell that data. How And they ask the developer, right, how much data can we get? The developer looks at it and goes, well, let's see it, we run it on the device. Well, we can get pretty much everything. And the manager says, wait, what, everything? And you're like, yeah. They're like, well, then let's get everything because it's valuable. That incentive is just, it's corrupting the entire reason why we want these devices and want to have a digital connection. So that's knowing all of that coming into it was like, we're going to create something that's completely different. And we're going to fight for that on a daily basis. So it's in everything we do. All of the team that we have hired on, the expert team we have, they all care about that same issue. So they're driving that forward in every code we commit, right? Every line of code's a moral decision, and we're committing a really strong moral compass on the code we write.
We have to move on at some point, but I still have to go back to
Okay,
something,
go ahead.
another thing that you mentioned, and tie it together with a community question that we got. You mentioned adhesion contracts, which are one of the
Mhm.
the sneaky little things that enable this whole surveillance business model at a very fundamental level. Maybe you could go into a bit of an explanation of what they are, and let's also answer, maybe in connection with that, Alex's other question, which is whether purism is legal in the world, or are there any specific regulations? And also, please answer how can you manage not having a contract with people? I would also be interested in that.
Sure. Okay, so the first and the last kind of relate. So contract of adhesion, it's just a term which means that you're signing something that's giving up your rights, and it shouldn't. Okay, which are all of the big tech companies' contracts that you sign. Every piece of software, pretty much, you're downloading and you're having to agree to a terms of service. It's a giant contract, and basically what that says is we can do everything we want to gather up all the data, and we can sell it in the market, and you can't do anything about it. And then the reason it's a contract of adhesion is because the service or product will not work unless you sign it. So if you purchase the phone, you're like, you have this giant terms of service, and if you click no, then it doesn't work. So it's not something you're actually reading and able to adjust or agree to. So that's that first piece, and why it's so toxic. Why we also don't require it at all. The reason we don't require it is because all of the software that we write is free software. Source code's available. You can audit it. It's peer reviewable. But then also, it's like, well, we're actually going back to the days when you bought a product and it was yours. So you can disassemble our phone, and you can add, you know, debug ports and start tinkering away on it. You have a right to repair it. We even provide motherboards if you want to purchase that and replace it. So there's all sorts of options where we put you in control because we don't participate and we're not incentivized by the entire surveillance capitalism market.
All right.
And so then that how that kind of relates to the last bit is then by putting you in control, that allows us to we can ship worldwide. Uh, we ship worldwide currently. About 50% of our sales are US. The other 50% is outside the US. But that does relate back to service. With our awesome service is available in the US because that's where we have US contracts with carriers. Outside the US, we're always considering. However, what you do in those cases is typically go get a prepaid SIM and pop it in the phone, and off you go. You can also, of course, get regular SIM service from any provider, but it's not quite adding the same privacy protection or personal identifying information that's available. I do see one question here, which kind of relates to that. Distribution, manufacturing, kind of relates around like shipping worldwide. Doing hardware is capital intensive. So we also have investment. We actually have an active investment round right now. You go to our site, you'll be able to click on and be able to invest and become an equity owner in Purism. Last year we were profitable, did about a little over 9 million in sales. But the reason is hardware is a capital intensive business. If you're doing software, it's software development, and then you can kind of manage that. It's inexpensive, but we have millions of dollars locked up in actual physical assets of capacitors and resistors and components to build devices. So hardware is challenging. The hardware is, as we like to say, hardware is hard, primarily from a capital nature.
Not to mention the economies of scale that the larger producers have access to. So I always admired.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I always admired smaller players who can be successful in the hardware market because smartphones are cutthroat, laptops, all electronics at this point are really cutthroat markets where it's very hard to enter
Correct.
without huge numbers.
You're exactly right. So typically what you're doing is called single digit margins. So it is very cutthroat. What we did is by saying, hey, look, we're doing something different. We're going to also invest in tens of millions of dollars into the R&D process. So you can imagine building a phone that doesn't run Qualcomm or MediaTek, runs NXP. It's an ARM-based device. Doesn't run Android or iOS, so we had to build our own operating system. We had to then build the what we call FOSH, which is the phone shell. Then we had to build out a library, which we now call libadwaita, which is integrated so you can use desktop apps on a mobile footprint, which then creates a convergent operating system. All of that is very capital intensive to create. But the important thing is by doing those things that are different, that then allows us to where we can have healthier margins. Our price point for our devices are, at the more expensive side, but they're also high quality products. And so we knew that in that market, we could have healthier margins that allow us to continue to fund and cycle and be profitable and grow. That business model was one that we, started at the very early days of the company.
Right. Once again, I will just stop myself from digging into any of those threads. And let's move on to a
Go ahead.
community question that we got on Matrix from John Smith. Thanks for the question. So once again, guys, we're also keeping an eye on Matrix if you want to stay anonymous and not log in with your YouTube or Twitch account to ask questions. His question is, how can someone make sure that there is no backdoor embedded into their hardware, apart from using the usual open source software, etc.?
Okay, so there's a handful of ways. Of course, the best way is having it be free software or open source software where you can peer review or audit the code. The reason that that's valuable is you can actually execute that, run it, and confirm that there's nothing sent nor received. The other thing is, then you're able to, by being able to verify it, then of course the third parties, the pools of folks, everybody who uses it is more eyes on that to verify that it's not sending or receiving data. There isn't all these web calls going on constantly. So the peer reviewable side is really important. But then there's this other piece that's really valuable that proprietary software can never do, which is called reproducible builds. So you're actually able to build you can download all the code if you wanted to, and build it all and confirm that the binary made at the end has no backdoors in it. And so that means that then your hashes can match what we built. And that's called reproducible build. You can verify that there's nothing wrong in the build process. But when you're looking at hardware, the challenge is, an integrated circuit. A resistor isn't going to all of a sudden have a webcam or GNSS and inside of it. A resistor is a resistor. So we, by releasing our schematics and also doing the manufacturing, especially the Liberty phone made in the USA, it's actually our components from our own reels that we manufacture and put into the phone, flash the firmware, and in our case, the firmware for the boot process, everything that executes on the kernel is all free software. So all that code can be verified, and then you're able to own the entire stack. So one of the how that relates back is when people talk about security, it really is where's the weakest link in the chain. So if you boot and your first bit is controlled by Microsoft, well then they sign everything after, which means they're in control. On our devices, we provide you access to every link in the chain, which means the first bit loaded is yours. So you can sign it. You can actually sign it with your own encryption keys. And so then every link after that, you can actually verify through what's called verified boot, and you can confirm that everything beyond it is secure. How that relates to one really important thing on our laptops and later on our phones, we have something called Pure Boot that you can actually have a Librem key, which is ours, and you insert that in the device. And when it boots up, it boots and uses your own encryption key. And if nothing has been tampered with, it's going to blink green. If a single bit has flipped since the last known good state, it's going to blink red. So we actually have cryptographic tamper detection built in because we provide you the encryption to the first bit loaded on the device. So you have control from there and you're able to securely boot the entire device, which is why on the laptop side, it's a getting us an awful lot of attention, an awful lot of sales, because people really care about, like, I actually control this device. I can control the encryption, and we provide you all the tools to do so.
Actually, Max, who I mentioned, from our team, a bunch of people are using Purism devices, including our lead DevRel, Max, and he asked me to ask you about this today. So now you covered it. Excellent. Now I will ask a question from you from Rocio. She asked it both on Matrix in one way, shape, or form, and then also here in the chat, which is that. Oh, sorry. Actually, this is a different question. But anyways, I clicked it now. So let's address this one. What is the difference between only installing PureOS on your system, like a random laptop, or buying a Librem 14? I guess you already sort of addressed this, but not directly. So let's talk about it.
Sure. So you can install PureOS on any device. You can download it, install it. One of the challenges is that it doesn't fully operate in typically all of your accessories, because we do not allow proprietary code. So you can imagine you download it and run it on a laptop that's not ours, then it's possible the Wi-Fi card won't work, or the GPU won't work, or the graphics won't work, or the trackpad won't work. And so you'd have to download those additional firmware binaries, which means it taints what you have. We don't have control of those things, so we don't allow them in PureOS. So PureOS is very strict. It's actually a free software foundation endorsed distribution. So what we did is we produce hardware that complies entirely with that strictures of PureOS. It's a completely freedom respecting software that runs on and all features work on the hardware. So it's really that marriage, which relates to convenience. So of course, we have a lot of people who do download PureOS, get things running, try to figure out their own, and then add the necessary bits to get something running because they like PureOS. However, the bundle is just adds convenience and all features work, right? So you get a box that you get something that's working out of the box, and then you're able to modify it as you need.
Excellent. Um, Now, another question, another community question that I want to ask you is maybe in a bit of a different wording. The question literally reads, "When Android version?" And maybe I would rephrase that. Would it
Ah,
make
I think I get it.
would it make sense at all, or are you thinking about just releasing a ROM that is an Android ROM that I could maybe install on my? I have a Galaxy S22 Ultra. Could I install it, or actually, can I run PureOS on an Android phone as it is on a random Android phone?
Okay, so that direction of the question, the answer is pretty simply no. Okay, so the reason is there's cryptographic keys. Android locks up the market. There's the complexity of running a straight up Linux kernel distribution that's not an Android, or a stripped down Android. Is There's a lot of projects that have been trying. I give them all a tremendous amount of credit. That's a hard battle. And the other piece is that you also have a very hostile upstream. So imagine these phones churn out every couple of years. So if you start attacking one version and you're trying to get that one version to work, by the time you actually do, you're now 3 versions behind. So working with a superbly hostile upstream like Google is it's a really steep challenge. From that tunneling from that direction of, hey, can we create a Linux kernel based distribution that runs on standard phones that are Qualcomm or MediaTek? There's plenty of projects. Support those projects if you do want that. That's not the approach we're taking. We're tunneling from the other direction, which is to say, we don't want a hostile upstream. We don't want to participate in big tech. We don't even want to purchase a phone from them to give them money. We're going to create our own hardware that we know can run fully free software, and then we're going to iterate on that and improve it over time. But we're always going to have a very friendly upstream because we are the upstream. Right. So that creates where we control our own future. So then the flip side of that question is, okay, can you run Android on the Librem 5 phone or the Liberty phone? And the short answer is no, not easily. However, you can emulate Android applications. So let me just go through briefly on what we call the app gap. So if you're looking at right now, you have an Android or an iOS phone, and you say, what are the apps you absolutely positively must have? Usually it's only about 5 apps. Sometimes they're around a communication app. Typically they're a proprietary communication app. And so in those cases, you need to make phone calls, text messaging, browse the web, contacts, gaming apps, but all those things work fine. But if you have a very specific application that's a branded app, then there's 3 approaches to what we call closing the app gap. The first is, can it be a native app? Can it be something that somebody writes and we execute it and it runs on the phone itself? Then that's a native app. The second is called progressive web apps. This is where, if you're using, let's say, LinkedIn can run entirely from the browser. So you actually just create an icon on the actual mobile interface. You can click a LinkedIn icon and it launches corner to corner, pixel perfect, in isolation browser that you're able to access that application. And then the third tends to be where you need to have an Android app because it has very specific purposes in that binary. In that case, we can emulate those through what's called Waydroid. So then we can execute corner to corner pixel perfect Android apps, but the challenge is every one of those apps needs some, curation, so ability to change configurations so that it can actually run. As an example, if you want to use the camera, we have to make sure that can poke through to actually have access to the camera real time. So there's definitely an approach to take, and realize number of apps is just momentum and time. We have momentum. So it's just a matter of time, and time can be compressed with cash. So the more investment we get, the more we grow, the more we can invest in improving that app ecosystem.
Excellent. That's very interesting. I will have to move on though because I have a question for you. A bunch of the other questions that I had listed we already addressed in bits and pieces. But one of the things that I think is super interesting, a lot of people are mixing up, and I think you may be the right person to help us make sense of, is privacy versus security. Now, obviously, we understand why
Mhm.
people sort of use these phrases often as interchangeable. Because they are joined at the hip. But there is a difference. So let's talk about the
Mhm.
similarities and differences. And what is your approach to privacy and security, and what is the difference between these two terms?
So yeah, so we actually sort of quantify things into three categories because we also add civil liberties or freedoms in there. So freedoms to us is sort of the nucleus. Without being able to audit the code, then you can't actually verify you have the keys, which means that that's on the security side, right? So it's like I need to be in control of my device and make sure that I'm fully secured, which is other people coming to me, right? I want to make sure my device is secured. Privacy protection is what am I opting into? What am I sharing out there in the world, right? So on one hand, you can think of it as like if you're looking at a house, it's like, do I have locks on my doors, right? Do I have, window shades? That's sort of just other people coming out, coming in, right? So that's very important from the privacy protection side, or from the security side, rooted in this freedom piece. When you're looking at privacy protection, it's like, what am I sharing when I go outside, right? What are my clothes I have on? That is a different thing than how am I secured in my foundation. So they all relate, but they are distinctly different. You can have a completely secured device and then you choose to go log into Facebook and share all your data with Meta. But that's your choice in our instance, rather than it being a default privacy invasion piece. So you can also have purchase something that you believe to be super secure, but it's a privacy because it participates in surveillance capitalism. It's just leaking your data all day, every day, and so it doesn't even matter if you use encryption because at the lower level, it has access to it all and it's going to leak your data out to a third party. So security, you can think of it as more, inbound protection, defense, and the privacy protection side is, who do you want to have access to your data, and who is gathering up that data without your knowledge nor consent.
Yeah. I would say there's also a different sort of way to separate them in a bit more simpler terms. What you're saying is much more precise, but how I like to think about it is privacy often like privacy protection is protection against things that happen to you en masse, involving a lot of other people. So like companies, because of the surveillance capitalist business model, hoovering up all the data together with all of other people's and then making sense of it through machine learning and then learning things about you and everybody else. That's more privacy, so that's en masse, and then security is more individual, right? So I would say if you have security concerns when it comes to technology, it's more an attack like directed against you specifically. Do you think that's a good way of thinking about it?
You're, I mean, of course, you're right. The piece that relates is when you're dealing with security, you think of it as like, where are my keys? Who has access to my keys? I want my encryption to be right. That is the security side. Who can penetrate? What's my threat model? On the privacy side, it's, as soon as you boot the device, it's immediately leaking all your data, which is a privacy invasion. And so, yes, they do absolutely relate. And I like your analogy. I think it is clear.
Excellent. Moving on, I don't know which question I should ask. I guess we will close with a community question that I particularly like, and I think it would be a nice way of wrapping up this conversation. But before that, Purism roadmap. That's what I have here in my original list. Do you have any upcoming devices or services or anything interesting that you would want to drop some alpha on our community?
Sure. Sure. So yeah, we have sort of what I'd say is like standard fare. We have a 16-inch laptop that we're coming out with, so we sort of are adding yet another SKU and sort of version bumps on our Librem Mini will be a version Mini V3. Some things like that are on the roadmap. That's on the hardware product side. We also, one of these pieces of services. Obviously, one of the things that we would love to investigate further is a NIM-backed data connection side of our services. So you can see that just becomes integrated. So you can imagine someone purchases a device that they light up the services, be that, let's say, we right now we provide Mastodon, email, VPN, as well as um, Matrix, and there's other services we're going to add on top of that. But imagine a NIM integrated service for folks. That'd be really valuable, and that's something that's on the developmental roadmap. We have a bunch of other areas around closing the app gap, and then there is actually going to be something we announce probably in a couple of months that is completely new. Doesn't actually exist in the marketplace in the same way, and we'll very likely be doing that via a crowdfund, so we can actually invest all the dollars to create an entirely new product line, and that will be something really exciting. And I'd love to chat more about that once that actually comes out.
All right, maybe that's an excellent apropos to bring you back on this community call once it happens, right?
For sure.
Also, I hope it goes without saying that hearing a possible Purism NIM collaboration, which you described, sounds like really a match made in heaven. So I'm really excited about that as well. Maybe we'll have
Absolutely.
something to share with the community at an upcoming time.
Yeah, the integration piece, again, it gets back to convenience. Rather than having it be you got to download this thing, do extra setup, configure. What we have is you just boot up the device, log in, your login credentials light up the services you have authorized for, and off you go. Like that integration is something that I'd be really excited to pursue.
Excellent. Now here's the question. We still have a good 6 minutes to go. So feel free to.
Let's jam through
Yeah,
them.
exactly. This is the question that I wanted to wrap up with because you already answered it in bits and pieces once again. But I want to hear your direct answer to this question, also from Rocio. What was or is your main motivation for creating Purism? How long did it take to make your first product available to the public? Specifically, the first part is what I'm really interested in.
Sure. So, boy, going back to now about the middle of the 2000s, early 2000s, like 2005, 6, 7. I was really involved in the free software world, always struggling to find hardware that worked. And then as surveillance started to become more prevalent, more people more concerned over it, and then also like realizing that, hey, what can I do to help? Realize like I could create a bundle, a convenient product that actually respects people. So that motivation makes it where I can say, hey, we're getting to that summit of this mountain, and the entire team joins in.
I would like to hear the end of. Maybe while he's joining us again, I can already share the secret phrase, which Salazar tells me that there's no secret phrase for today. Apparently, for the POAP, is that the case, Salazar? Please confirm. Okay, so how do people claim it? Do they just go to the to nimtech.net/go/POAP and then claim it without a passphrase? Okay, cool. So confirmed. This time around, we let you off the hook, and you can just go to the usual link and claim your POAP. I will still leave a few minutes for Todd to rejoin if he can, because I would really like to hear the end of that thought. But this has been a really interesting conversation. So rest assured, guys, Todd will be back on these community calls at some point. I will make sure of that. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it at least as much as I did, because oh, there he is. Wait a second. We don't have video yet. There you are. Lost you for a second.
Oh yeah, it's weird. I just had to refresh on my side. I'm not sure what ended up happening. Didn't look like it was the connection on my side, but anyway, where I believe I left off was sort of the question of the founding principles. And so I started the company around really around that mission of saying I want to be different. I want to create product that actually respects the digital rights of society. To do so, it's about providing convenience and control to those individuals. And then from there, it sort of has iterated. I started with a laptop. I think the second part of the question was I started by crowdfunding a laptop. We built it and delivered it. Then I did another version of a laptop. I built it and delivered it. Then we actually did the much harder thing, which is to try and build a phone that is an Android or iOS. It took us quite a number of years actually to get to the point of a finished product. But then we delivered all of that, and now we've added more SKUs. We have a tablet and a mini PC that we've launched all on our own.
Excellent. I'm glad to have you back so that you could finish that thought, Todd. In the meantime, I did the outro real quick I had something to say to the community while you were joining back.
Sure.
I also told people that you are definitely going to be back on one of these community calls. I will make sure of that. It was an excellent conversation. I had a lot of fun here. Do you have any closing remarks?
One of the things, if people are interested, check out our site, of course, support our product, get involved in our community. And then we also have an active investment raise. So if you're interested in becoming part owner of Purism, we're offering equity raise, minimum $500. The value of getting community and community support behind the investment means that we stay true to our beliefs, because then you're part of it and you're helping promote that. So that is something that I do certainly want to share.
All right. With all of that said, ladies and gentlemen, we had Todd Weaver on, CEO of Purism. Hopefully, links to Purism were shared in the chat. I would like to reiterate that this was a really enlightening conversation for me. So I hope to have you back at some point. And now I will let you start your day, because it's very early where you are.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Hey, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
It was nice having you.